Hi everybody. So this is going to be a still life painting of some glass bottles and broken glasses and a couple of light bulbs, just as a traditional still life. I thought it might be interesting to do the most traditional subject matter with the most modern painting medium, which is a digital painting program. It's Sketchbook Pro, which I like because it's very simple and stripped down. There's no fancy tools. It's everything I need and nothing that I don't. I also use Photoshop because Photoshop has some more sophisticated tools that Sketchbook Pro doesn't, but I'm a painter. I'm not a photograph manipulator, so I only use Photoshop occasionally for certain things. What I found interesting about this arrangement is that usually my paintings are all about big shapes of darks and lights, and since all of the objects are transparent, or most of them, it doesn't really establish the same kind of pattern of darks and lights that I would usually expect. So I had to think about composition in a very different way. It's not so much about the big patterns of value shapes, it's more about the arrangement of the bottles themselves and the glasses. And the other thing that I had to think about was how I was going to approach color. Now I had the object sitting in front of me. There's no photographs involved in this painting. And in real life, there are very, very subtle shifts of color from one part to the next. The glass has a slightest bit of a greenish, kind of a turquoise cast, but just barely. I mean, you have to look really close to see it. And also, on a different, you could call it on a different visual level, the shadows have a slightly more, almost pale olive green kind of a color, and the lights on the glass have almost like a tan, kind of a yellow ochre kind of a color. It's very, very subtle, extremely subtle. So I thought if I was trying to do color that subtle throughout the process of the actual painting, establishing the values, I think that would really slow down the process, and it would add unnecessary confusion to deciding where the values go. So uncharacteristically, I decided to separate the parts of the process. Usually I like to handle color and value at the same time so that I can gradually work my way towards the right balance of all of the different elements. Starting with just the values, the darks and lights, is a very traditional way of doing things though, so I thought I would give that a shot. One of my favorite artists from the late 1800s, a portrait artist named, and I'm not going to say this right because I don't speak French, but from the pronunciations that I've heard online, it's something like Jean-Dominique Ingres or Ang, something like that. And he would do a complete grisaille, which is basically just a terrible American pronunciation of the French word for gray. He would paint everything in black and white perfectly rendered, and then he would glaze the colors over top using pure color without any white mixed in to keep the colors really pure. And his paintings are gorgeous. They're just really, really beautiful. And I've used that technique of glazing color over black and white in oil paint, and I've done a similar technique with acrylic paint. This will be the first time I've done it digitally. In principle, it should be the same process, but since you can control things like the type of layer, rather than having just a quote-unquote normal layer, you can use a color layer or a multiply, etc., etc. And it changes the way that the computer calculates what the color means that you've put down on the screen. So it's not exactly the same process as when you're using traditional media, acrylic or oil or even watercolor, I suppose, but I'm just starting to consistently practice with watercolor. I have very little experience with watercolor, so I can't really say anything about that. But it should be interesting because the color is so subtle that it's just the tiniest little hint. But for the moment, I'm just trying to block everything in and get everything established, get all the values right, so that even though there isn't big value shapes, connecting everything together, there are little hints and little, I guess you could say, echoes of values. This vertical line down the handle of that mug with that little dark spot at the base of the handle, and then around the rim of the broken part, just those little hints of those dark accents. And then the same goes for the white accents as well, the lightest areas. And just trying to balance all those things. It's a very instinctual process, I guess. There are methods that you can use for establishing compositions. There's something called the golden mean, and maybe sometime I'll explain that, but I really, really, really hate those methods of composition. They're so stale and dry and predictable that I try to go by feeling, which is not a thing that you can really explain. Either you can feel it or you don't. But when you go by artistic instinct, that it leaves the possibility open for unexpected compositions and innovation, I guess. And I love that idea, to not feel like I'm boxed in. The thing about making a video of a painting like this is a difficulty in determining how fast the time-lapse should be. I don't know if you can tell what's going on well enough. I zoom in and zoom out a lot, so it's kind of jittery to watch it, the whole painting experience. If I go slower, I had one version of this video that was 6 videos long, 6 10-minute videos, and I thought, it might be overkill. There's a sculptor on YouTube who has done series up to 50 or more videos, and they're all interesting because you can see the entire process very clearly, even though it's maybe quadruple time or 8 times the original speed. So I don't know, if anybody ends up watching my videos, I hope you'll give me some feedback as to whether I should do it faster or slower or what exactly.
Another thing is, in a previous video that I did about sort of a preparation for doing a painting of the Hindu god Vishnu, I showed some of the anatomical work that I went through to figure out the anatomy of her shoulders and the chest and back, and it came across as much more instructional. And there are certainly things that I could teach beginning or intermediate artists, but I don't really feel like that's my role. I don't think I'm going to try and play that part as a YouTuber. So I'm not going to take down that video, but I feel more like a very casual person, I guess. I'd rather just put up what I'm doing and maybe show the problems that I ran into and show the solutions that I came up with, and just let that stand on its own. So I'm not going to try and play the teacher part anymore.
So thanks for watching. This was the first video in a 2-video set. So head over and take a look at the second one if you want to see how this painting turns out. Thanks.